It's not just my opinion. Science also backs the fact that mindfulness is one of the best things you could do for your recovery, and I'm about to give you 5 reasons why. Hey, this is Chris from the Rewired Soul, where we talk about the problem, but focus on the solution. And this is Ask an Addict. So when I first learned what mindfulness was, I was like, this is probably the best thing possible to ever happen to an addict or an alcoholic. Like, I did not find mindfulness until I was 3 years sober. So if you're watching this right now, I highly suggest you take these 5 reasons and you incorporate it into your recovery, because I guarantee it will strengthen your sobriety. Reason number 1. Mindfulness is scientifically proven to help you with impulse control. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. One of the things that I do for my treatment centers that I follow up with people, and unfortunately, some people do relapse, and I always ask them, I'm like, what happened? You know, I love analyzing what happened so I can try to do my job better. And I always heard the same thing. Well, Chris, I got into a fight with my wife, so I used. Well, Chris, my boss was kind of angry with me today, so I used. Well, Chris, I had a bill in the mail, so I used. That's not what happened. What actually happened was that there was a series of moments that led to picking up that drink or a drug. For example, I'll use myself as an example. I would get into a fight with my kid's mom. I would get angry. I would get a craving. Then I'd pick up the phone and call or text my dealer. Then I would wait for my dealer, and then I'd have to get ready and go out of my house and get to my car. So what I'm saying is that there was 1,000 different moments in between the time I had a craving and by the time I took the first drink or drug. But the problem is that a lot of us, we go straight from our trigger to the behavior, and we're on autopilot in between. So when you begin having a normal mindfulness practice, which can literally only be 5 to 10 minutes a day, you start strengthening the part of your brain responsible for impulse control. So you start creating this gap in between the trigger and the behavior where you can start making more logical decisions. This is also very beneficial because a lot of addicts and alcoholics in early recovery have terrible emotional regulation. What's emotional regulation? Remember that time you got angry and without thinking about it, you threw your cell phone across the room and broke it? That has to do with emotional regulation and impulse control. So mindfulness will strengthen the part of your brain that helps you out with that. Reason number 2, mindfulness helps with mental illness. Most people who struggle with alcoholism or addiction have a co-occurring disorder. The most common ones are anxiety or depression. You also have people who struggle with ADHD or PTSD. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands of studies out there that have proven that a regular mindfulness practice helps you recover from these forms of mental illness. One of the reasons that I have to put this out there is because some of you watching this are solely only working in a 12-step program. Your mental health is crucial. And while 12-step programs do implement meditation, it's important to pick up specific practices that are gonna help you with your anxiety, depression, or whatever your mental illness may be. I will give you the prime example. I'm someone who suffers from anxiety as well as depression. Anxiety in itself is a fear of the future or a lot of regret for something you did in the past. Mindfulness is a constant practice of bringing yourself back right now into the moment. So when you train your brain to do that, it's no wonder how mindfulness helps with anxiety. Let's talk about PTSD. PTSD is triggered by thoughts of the past, something that happened in the past. This is why they're starting to use mindfulness for people from the VA to help them when they're returning from war, because mindfulness helps bring them back to the present moment. As far as depression goes, there are a lot of different practices that help spark the different neurotransmitters in the brain. I talk about this in my Depression Hack series. Don't forget to check out my Depression Hack series. But then when it comes to ADHD, it has been proven that mindfulness helps people concentrate and focus. This is one of the primary reasons why they're using mindfulness in elementary schools these days, because it helps train the part of the brain that is responsible for focusing. Reason number 3, it is great for cravings. So I'm gonna spit a little history on you real quick. Mindfulness really started to gain traction in the United States when a gentleman named John Kabat-Zinn brought in a new therapeutic technique called mindfulness-based stress reduction. In the 1980s, I believe, they started trying to use it for people who suffer from chronic pain. And what they found was that people who started this mindfulness-based stress reduction were seeing huge decreases in pain. And right now you're sitting there like, Chris, why are you telling me about pain when we're talking about cravings? Well, this is why. What they found was that it wasn't necessarily the pain that was making people so miserable. What it was a person's relationship to that pain. This is the same thing with cravings. A lot of cravings are going to be very minimal, but we actually intensify the cravings by obsessing on the cravings. And you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. What may have started out with just seeing a beer commercial, or maybe you saw that bottle of pills over there, was like, I wonder, what that feels like. But then you can't stop thinking about it. So it's your actual relationship with it. Part of mindfulness is non-judgmental awareness. I've had a lot of people come to me and they feel guilty about having cravings. Don't feel guilty about having cravings. That'd be like getting angry at a bear for craving fish. That's just what we do. We're drug addicts and alcoholics. Mindfulness helps remind you of that cravings are a normal part of life, as well as every other emotion out there, such as anger, sadness, happiness, excitement. So mindfulness is going to help you a lot with cravings. I have another video that I want you to check out. It's called RAIN. This is a meditation practice for mindfulness. And what it does is it helps you work with the craving as well as any other negative emotion in a much healthier way. Reason number 4, addiction is literally the main reason why Buddhism even came to fruition. So back in the day, this dude Buddha, what he realized was that craving ultimately leads to suffering. So just to let you know, I'm not a devout Buddhist. I don't even practice the Buddhist religion. I am just a firm believer in the Buddhist philosophy. A lot of it actually had to do with psychology if you start looking into it. But what he found out when looking at human nature and the way that the brain works is that a lot of suffering comes from craving. A lot of people like to cling on to the things that they want, and they'll cling on to it so much that it actually leads to personal suffering. Now, if you can't relate to that as a drug addict or an alcoholic, I don't know what to tell you. But that idea that this thing is going to solve all our problems, this drug, this alcohol, whatever's in that pill or that line, we cling to the idea that it's going to help us out in life, and then we refuse to let it go. And that's why some of us stay in our addiction for so long. So I hope you've checked out my interview with Dr. Judson Brewer, but in other interviews, he talks about how his study of the Buddha's traditions and philosophies is what actually led him to becoming an addiction psychiatrist, because he saw that same thing, that the whole entire foundation of Buddhism is to get rid of clinging and grasping, which then leads to suffering. Reason number 5, mindfulness is the lazy person's dream. I cannot tell you how many people I have come up to me and they say, Chris, I can't get to a meeting, I don't have a car. Chris, meetings are like an hour long. Oh, Chris, I don't have money to go see a therapist. Well, mindfulness is something that you can literally practice anywhere. All mindfulness is a practice of paying attention in the present moment on purpose and non-judgmentally. You can be doing that right now while you're watching this video if you have practiced it. So if you have excuses like you don't want to leave the house, or you have kids and can't leave the house, or maybe your spouse doesn't trust you and doesn't want you to leave the house, all you need to do is literally find 5 to 10 minutes to do your mindfulness practice, and you will be strengthening your recovery, because you are strengthening the part of your brain that actually has made you an alcoholic or an addict. That part of the brain is called the prefrontal cortex. And just so you know, all of this information and a whole bunch more is in my course about understanding the disease of addiction that you can find on the rewiredsoul.com. So once you get rid of all the excuses, you realize that mindfulness is something that you can do literally anywhere. And I'm talking about anywhere. There are different practices that you can find. I'm talking about mindful eating, mindful walking, mindful listening, all sorts of mindfulness practices that you can do anywhere once you start developing your practice. So this is something that will strengthen your recovery as backed by science, and you can do it for absolutely free and anywhere that you want to do it. So my question to you is, why would you not check it out? So those are my top 5 reasons why you need to check out mindfulness to strengthen your recovery. And don't forget, if you have questions that you want me to answer about addiction, about recovery, about helping a friend or family member, leave it in the comments below. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of the new daily content that I put out. And also don't forget to follow me on Instagram or Twitter at The Rewired Soul. I'll see you next time.